92 that they added specifically brain injury to the ADA. So it's still new if you think about it. It's 30 years or so since it's been around, and so what I see is that survivors of brain injury, because it's an invisible injury, sometimes they have trouble getting access or having reasonable accommodations met. So there is a lot of stigma still surrounding brain injury and invisible wounds. There's still a huge population in our, in our society that they don't. If you don't have something visibly wrong with you, they don't believe that you have a disability, and they're not the judge and jury. They're not a doctor, but they still feel like they can make those kind of decisions. And so the stigma around brain injury is very similar because it can be someone very young. It could be somebody who looks very healthy still. It can be somebody who can still talk very well, but has huge deficits in other areas that you don't necessarily see. So if somebody is, a survivor of brain injury or reports that they have a disability, believe them. There's no reason not to. So the ADA is important for survivors of TBI because it gives them the federal regulation that says this is law and you have to at least do your best to meet requests. Without it, there is no law. And without the law, there's no reason for a business or employer to ever engage your accommodation request. And so at very least, it provides you with legal framework to ensure that employers are, following the law. As far as disclosure and the ADA, you will have to disclose some things if you put in a reasonable accommodation request. For example, when I put an accommodation request into the state of Washington as my employer, they asked for some kind of doctor's note that said that there was, in fact, a disability and what that disability was in terms of the request that I put in. So if I put in a request for something that was totally unrelated to my disability, they could potentially say no. Survivors of brain injury oftentimes feel they need to disclose the brain injury because it's invisible and because there's stigma around it, and so it means people put themselves out there, and it can leave them open to all kinds of fraud, to people taking advantage of them, and so know your rights. In summary, the best advice I could give is that you should know your resources. Get as educated as you can. Get to know your state representatives. Call your regional ADA. Look up the national ADA and do as much reading, take as much in as you can. This provides you with the legal framework to get the accommodations that you need and the accessibility that you need. And so those are things that you need. And your employers and business owners should be at least doing their best to provide those requests and accommodations as they come in. So get out there and be your best